They are quite tough jobs. It's interesting. There's a case in the UK. Some new tobacco boss was being paid 18.2 million quid for his total RIM package.
Just sell cigarettes.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
As a reporter, it's your job to spread the facts and to inform the country.
Yeah,
it's not your job to let your ideologies.
They do get ahead of themselves, some of the young ones. The scandal involving Te Pāti Māori and confidential census data is as serious as it gets in a democracy like ours.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, welcome to the program. You are with the Editor-in-Chief.
Duncan Garner, live.
G'day everybody, welcome. I'm Duncan Garner, welcome along. Good to have your company tonight. I'm about to file a missing persons report. Yep, firstly for the Māori Party co-leaders, who appear to no longer be so keen to dress up and be in front of the cameras. I'll file one for John Tamahiri, who also appears to be unavailable to us, but also available to the soft, sycophantic Māori-run media, as president of the Māori Party, you see. And I'll file one for the mainstream media, who are missing in action when they should be knocking down the doors of the Māori Party, demanding some answers to this increasingly concerning allegation that they misused data to steal the Māori seat of Tamaki Makaurau off the Labour Party. I'll have more on this shortly. Also, at age 41, she was in charge of $6 billion. Now she coaches the CEOs. What does she tell them? And what do the CEOs ask her? The CEO coach. We'll have her shortly. Get in touch through our social media at Duncan Garner Podcast on TikTok, also Instagram, or flick me an email, duncan@rover.nz. Let's go.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Okay, so the scandal involving Te Pāti Māori and confidential census data is as serious as it gets in a democracy like ours. Allegations suggest they gained access to sensitive information and used it to win a critical Auckland Māori seat by just 42 votes. That's half a street's worth of votes. It is nothing. It's a few houses. The issue? That data was never meant to be in the hands of the Māori Party in the first place. Stats New Zealand, the government agency responsible for handling census information, has admitted they shouldn't have sent it to Te Whānau o Waipareta, an organisation led by Te Pāti Māori President John Tamahiri. Now the boss of Stats New Zealand has resigned. He accepts responsibility for the mishap. So we've got a government department holding itself accountable. Finally, after a year, there's some accountability. But what about Te Pāti Māori? Hello? What's their response? Not us. Nothing to see here. Despite the scandal growing and now involving both the police and the Privacy Commissioner and Te Pāti Māori's leadership, Te Pāti Māori co-leaders are nowhere to be found. Debbie Ngāriwapaka conveniently jetted off to the Cook Islands and even marched in a anti-government rally in the Cook Islands. What on earth are you doing? And how's that relevant? Chicken, you're hiding. Rawiri Waititi, who usually can't resist a microphone, he's always in front of him, has suddenly gone missing. And John Tamahiri, who runs the very organisation at the centre of this, the Waipareta Trust, he's avoided mainstream media as well in favour of, well, Māori-run, sympathetic Māori media platforms, where he's claimed the entire situation is just Māori bashing. Now stop picking on Māori. Bugger off, John. This isn't about race. This is about electoral integrity and credibility. The media's red carpet treatment of the left. I mean, this is what it's about. What's truly frustrating about this scandal isn't just Te Pāti Māori's refusal to be found. It's the media's unwillingness to press them on it. Find them. Knock down doors. Imagine if this were national. Imagine it was ACT or any right-wing party accused of improperly using government data to win an election. The media would be camping outside their offices, outside their doors, demanding resignations, running wall-to-wall coverage. I've been there. I know. I was part of it. Yeah, for Te Pāti Māori, a few questions here and there from some sycophant. Nothing sustained, nothing too long, nothing resembling a proper grilling. TVNZ and stuff, well, it barely made headline news. New sub, RNZ and the spin-off, they're treating it like a side story rather than a potential electoral fraud case. And even Labour, who should be prosecuting this, they should be most outraged since, well, Penny Henardy lost a seat to this. They're staying eerily quiet. Why? Because, well, the Māori Party are a potential coalition partner to Labour, so they're playing it careful. And because the left-wing establishment protects its own. All sides do. Contrast this with how David Seymour is treated. The ACT Party leader can't make a policy suggestion, a policy statement, can't hop in a four-wheel drive without being attacked daily by journalists and commentators and Twitter activists. Yet here we have a left-wing party. Are they a political party or are they an activist movement? Separatist movement. Here we have a left-wing separatist faction party facing a potentially criminal investigation Well, they are. They're actually in the middle of it because the police are looking into this. And the media put their hands in their pockets and whistled away. They've basically said, okay, well, not much to see here. Not much to see here. Yeah, exactly. Sound of crickets, that's all we can hear. And what about Ngāti Wapeka? Where's the hard-hitting interview? Okay, we've had enough of the crickets. Where's the hard-hitting interview with Ngāti Wapeka? Where's the door-stopping of Waititi? Where's the demand for answers from Tamahiri? Electoral integrity matters for everyone. New Zealanders deserve confidence in our democracy. If a party's misused government data to manipulate an election, that's not just a scandal, it's a threat to free and fair elections. You can't get away with this stuff. And how long does justice have to take? It's been a year to get the head of stats to resign over this. So they've admitted their part in this. They've admitted the information's gone AWOL. So they've put their hand up. The police and the Privacy Commissioner are now investigating as well. So when will Te Pāti Māori be held accountable? And just as importantly, when will the media start doing their job and actually holding everybody to the same standard and to the same standard of accountability?
Duncan Garner, live.
Welcome along. You send us your thoughts and tell us what you think. Isaac, I know there's no camera on you. Somehow we've lost a camera in the Auckland studio.
Yeah.
But I can see the top of your head. So, as someone who's, swallows and consumes media and that sort of thing, do you think the media's soft on the left?
Yes, yeah.
You do?
Media these days is definitely, in my opinion, very left-wing. Well, very. Yeah, maybe wouldn't use the word very, but I'd say that definitely. Yeah, 100%. And I can understand why. I mean, the media is an industry that is often made up of the younger generation. Well, there are some stragglers of the older generations, like yourself, Duncan, who hang around.
This prick called me an old straggler.
Who hang around, but there are...
We're just a bit older.
Yeah, I'd say definitely a majority of the media industry is younger at the moment, millennials.
Yeah, there's always young people. And the thing is, I remember when we covered Labour and the Greens and opposition and Russell Norman, they'd get a daily free hit on the state of the economy or something. So... Yeah. I mean, I'm speaking from a position of experience as well. A position that I can say, well, have we always been like this, or was it? Am I just highlighting it now because I'm outside of it, looking back in? It's a worry. But why didn't they chase them down yesterday? Why? It's not a side story. This is possibly allegedly stolen a seat using.
I know. I think it's very interesting. Like I was mentioning to you before, how you definitely see it a lot. How within the world of not typically, but lots of journalists and reporters who can be speaking on things such as politics and stuff like that do tend to be left-leaning. I was mentioning to you a video that I saw of a reporter talking to David Seymour in the halls of Parliament and asking him, like, when are you going to stop doing this? And he said, stop doing what? And she said, stop being so arrogant or something like that.
That's opinion.
And it's just like, as a reporter, it's your job to spread the facts and to inform the country. Yeah, it's not your job to let your ideologies.
They do get ahead of themselves. Some of the young ones, I probably did too. But I remember when Brash hit up Petty Gower and he said, "You deceitful bastard," And you're probably right.
It's kind of thing. Like there are people in the media industry whose job it is to have an opinion, and they're paid to do that. Like Mike Hosking, it's his job, and you. And there's a whole bunch of other places and platforms like that, and there's platforms for all ranges.
It takes 30 years of experience to get 100%, to that point.
But as a reporter and a journalist that is supposed to be spreading facts and informing the country,
good on you, mate. You feel strongly.
I do.
I do. Good on you. Good on you. At least it's not like the Māori Party who are. I do like the crickets.
Duncan Garner live.
So she was 41 and in charge of $6 billion and floors of staff. Rhiannon McKinnon headed up KiwiSaver, fund manager Kiwi Wealth, for 5 years, and then she was out and became a CEO coach. That's her sort of her role now. No one prepared her to be the boss at 41 years of age. You're the CEO of all these people. But no one prepared her and said, "Oh, right, this is what you need to do to be a CEO." No, it was a steep learning curve. Now she's out of that game and is a coach to the CEOs. What on earth does she tell them? And what do they want to know? What are the questions for her? Rhiannon joins us now in the studio. Rhiannon, lovely to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
What does so someone who's been a CEO at 41 then goes on to become a CEO coach? I don't think I've ever heard of a CEO coach. What do you do?
I think there are other CEO coaches. I had a coach when I was CEO, so maybe they've been sort of running around under the radar. Are you trying to give advice to the CEs? You try and listen, be a sounding board and try and nudge them off in the right direction as well. So what did you think about that? And have you talked to your board about that and all sorts of bits and pieces? It depends who they are, what they want.
Yeah.
Everyone's quite individual as well. So I'm learning that along the journey that, you can't just, it's not a one size fits all.
No, and that's right, everyone is different. Everyone's an individual. Plus, they have different industries, which require, I suppose, different skills.
Yeah.
What are the biggest mistakes that you? Well, you were a CEO, right? At 41. What was the biggest mistakes you made?
Biggest mistakes I made. I think I probably went in there pretty. You think that you need to turn up with this brand new vision and strategy from day one. That probably wasn't entirely necessary. I think thinking. I really believe in the people that are around me, which you can do to a fault. So you can ask them over and over again, do you think you can do this or X or Y? And they say, yep, Rhiannon, I can do it. And the reality is, for various reasons, maybe not all their own fault, they can't get everything done. And I think there were a few times that I could have called that. I kind of knew. I kept asking the same question.
Right.
And getting the same answer and going, okay, well, they've told me that, so that must be true because I trust them. But I probably should have pulled the ripcord on some things earlier.
Because they keep saying, it's coming, or
I've got
and you
it.
keep asking the same question,
Yeah, like, do you have enough resource? That looks like a distraction. Surely you can't do it all.
Yes.
And sometimes I've probably taken enthusiasm or optimism as realism.
Yeah. I sometimes, you give people benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
And
which you've got to do as well.
Yeah, well, there's a fine line, isn't it, between being cutthroat and then saying, well, you can't do it, mate. We're moving you on. I mean, is it hard to, if you look at people in the role and think, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that. It's hard to get rid of people, though, right?
It's very difficult under New Zealand law. I think they keep it quite tight. But you do want to make sure, like one person actually said to me when I first became CE, they said to me, Rhiannon, whatever you do, you need to get the right team around you, otherwise you're going nowhere. And, ultimately just write the check. So, but it's very, very, very hard to do.
It is. It can be time-consuming, but costly, and drag on if you make a meal of it. If you look at New Zealand today, and it's a struggle in business. If you look around, there's no one saying that things are great and everyone's going through tough times. What's your advice to companies at the moment? Because some of them are clinging on, right? Some of them are clinging on and they're looking for better days, but they're hard to see.
Oh, to the ones that are clinging on, I mean, I suppose keep clinging on and keep that cash flow. You try and keep your costs as absolutely low as possible and sort of you lengthen, in a startup world, what they call your runway as long as you possibly can. There's a lot of talking about surviving until 25. Well, we're here now, and so hopefully we're going to see some green shoots of recovery. I've seen people talking about them. I've seen some myself in my own business, so hopefully that's sort of coming through as interest rates have been cut, and I think there's another cut coming.
Better?
I personally feel it's getting a bit better.
I think too.
Yeah, that's my personal feeling. I think the second half of last year was pretty tough. It's interesting talking to people who are selling services to other businesses, the consultants and so forth. They're beginning to say, actually, this is a once in 30 year kind of moment.
Yeah, that's right. And everyone I speak to that has any knowledge of this worst recession since 1991, and the most protracted one too. So it's long. Usually we've dipped for a couple of quarters and come out of it. But we may have been in a recession or recessionary conditions now for 4 years.
Do you reckon that feels longer?
3. Well, there's a COVID blip, I suppose, on this housing, but remember COVID was 5 years ago.
Yeah, I started this business only 18 months ago, and the first 9 months seemed easier than the second 9 months.
Really?
It was interesting. Like even first half of last year seemed more buoyant than the second half. And I've been saying to people, like I was chatting to the local supermarket owner, and he was saying that things really started dropping in August last year.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, July, August, we noticed that too. And there's just no money around. No one was willing to invest. No one was willing to make a decision. Yeah. And I still think they're kind of at that. We were hoping they might come back in the new year.
Yeah, and that would be the sort of, the really easy throwaway piece of advice that is easier said than done, is like, take those risks, make those decisions, see what you can do. But I mean, if you're sort of looking at how you pay the next paychecks and so forth, then that's, much easier said than done. And I had a client who, took me on probably late 2023.
Yes.
And it's just every single month he's going, actually it's just getting worse rather than better.
Yes, that's a bit.
There's only so many risks. You can't invest through a downturn forever.
No. How do you approach a CEO coach? Do CEOs approach you? Does the staff or the board? Or what are they asking for? What sort of help are they asking for? They put their hand up and say, help me, but help you in what?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think often when a new CE is appointed, I mean, when I was appointed, immediately they said, well, who have you got to talk to? Have you got a coach? What are you doing about it? And then in my case, one of the board members says, I know somebody. Why don't you talk to this person? And so, I went off and spoke to them. And luckily we did get along.
Could be a lonely position, couldn't it?
Oh, it's definitely a lonely position.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lonely position because actually you've got a board, a chair. They're all telling you kind of what they need from you, and you might have a team below you, but they're amazing. Hopefully you've got a good team, but there are a whole load of things that you can't tell them, and you have to keep to yourself.
Is that right? Is it?
I think so. There's always something. I actually tried to be like on the main floor at Kiwi Wealth and sort of have open and be amongst the people, but it was actually impossible because practically every conversation I had was confidential in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So your communication's really upwards to the board, isn't it?
Well, both. I think you're almost in the middle of an hourglass. That you're trying to get what the management team are telling you and trying to make sure that you understand what's going on in the business and you're pushing those messaging and what needs to be done down.
It's like a sitting duck, isn't it?
And then you've got to push it back up to the board and make sure they're getting the right info. Like you don't want them drowned in noisy info. You want to make sure it's the relevant stuff, and you don't want to just be hiding away the bad stuff. You want to make sure, hiding the bad stuff. You want to make sure everything goes up so they can help make good decisions as well. And that's quite hard as a human to be like, actually, it's rubbish over here. Let me tell you.
I mean, can you keep stuff from a board?
Well, one can, but one shouldn't.
No, that's right. There must be that flow, right? But you can keep stuff from your management staff.
Well, there are some things that, I think Kiwi Wealth got sold and it was put on the block and so forth, and I would have known that it was up for sale before the rest of my management team, and held it to myself for a little while.
Yeah. Is it hard to sit on that sort of information, especially if you've got trusted lieutenants? And
you just have to, and I think they understand that there's just some things they can't be passed down immediately.
Yes. There's always this talk about CEOs, the pay rates of CEOs compared to other staff is astronomical if you look at a percentage.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? Because it's very easy to be the average worker who can criticise that, but these are tough jobs, right?
They are quite tough jobs. It's interesting. There's a case in the UK. Some new tobacco boss is being paid 18.2 million quid for his total REM package.
To sell cigarettes.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Well, I think
partly.
I think it partly is now with those sorts of jobs. Who wants to go and run a tobacco company? It's a Brazilian guy apparently.
Do it for a year.
Well, and also what they're saying, and so we should bring it back to New Zealand, but in the UK they're saying we're competing against US rates now because the US CEO pay packages are astronomical.
Yeah, I've seen them.
So if you want someone international and good in the UK, then you've got to start paying those rates. So that inflation kind of spreads quite fast.
So we're probably not paying that much.
Oh, not comparatively, no.
No.
So
that means international CEOs don't want to come here probably because the pay rates
are probably less in a lot of the industries, depending where you're trying to get them from. You see that with those kind of New Zealanders who come back to run, from the States or wherever to run New Zealand companies. It's always kind of like they're doing us a favour.
Well, Greg Foran in New Zealand, you look at Greg and he was in charge of Walmart.
Yes, I think he probably got, I don't know.
A massive pay cut to come
He
here.
must have done.
But you look at Warner's, who I used to work for, and I think the CEO, American, $49 million.
Wow.
It's not bad.
That's a lot of money.
When you're closing a newsroom because it's losing $30 million every year.
It is extraordinary, right? When you see these numbers. Yeah, I suppose some of the arguments are around sort of, market forces and, what value that they might bring to the organisation. Say for that 18.2 million, he needs to double the share price to get that and all sorts of other things.
Well, I was going to say...
So then you've generated some value before you get those big numbers.
So there is pressure on you guys to you have to perform because it's such big money that you need almost instant performance or an instant change in the company's fortunes, don't you, in many ways?
It's an interesting one because you're actually, I would probably counsel, and I'm sure I was counselled, you've got to think long term to actually get great results long term. But the reality is that if you don't make some short term progress, everyone wonders what you're doing.
Well, they want to see your plans working.
Yes.
They want to see the sort of step up. You called out Simon Henry, PDL Plastics, who described Nadia Lim as amongst other things, piece of fluff, and you were one of the first to call it.
Yeah, that's right.
You had no hesitation in that?
Absolutely no hesitation whatsoever. I thought it was pretty egregious, those comments. I was on a WhatsApp group and it was going around and someone said, you know what, I'm going to tell my fund manager to make sure we're not invested in that company on Monday. I think it was a Wednesday night, and I suddenly thought, hang on, I'm the CEO of a fund management business. So I called my head of responsible investment and I said, what's the story here? Are we invested in it? Can we take it off our list in terms of investments we can make. And we thought there was a very strong case around the governance of the organisation, the ESG, what he was saying, but also the fact he really couldn't be removed because of the way he owned the company, still owned a big share of it, and was on the board. So you really had no mechanism as a shareholder to do anything about
Well,
him.
he was a one-man band in many ways. What he said, he was like a dictator, really. What he said, hence why he made those comments, I suppose.
Yeah.
Did you have to run it by your board before you did that sort of thing?
I didn't have to run. No, I ran it by my responsible investment committee. So we
Right.
already were all set up for that sort of thing. We weren't expecting an event like that, but we had the internal processes. So we put it to the investment committee, I think, that evening, and it was voted on the next morning because it was done by email. And so by about 9 or 10 o'clock the next morning, I could, quite positively say it's been removed.
Oh, so that was. I mean, I was very aware of the story at the time. We interviewed Nadia, and she was very diplomatic and typical. I remember your comments. I thought there was a lack of CEs that went public on that. I think it was a very easy one to comment on, low-hanging fruit. But I thought some of them were too quiet.
Oh, that's interesting. There was another CE who came in pretty fast after me, I remember. But I suppose, other people maybe didn't want to wade in. I'm not quite sure why.
Yeah, well, it's not their. I suppose they didn't want to. It wasn't their fight. So why?
Yeah, I suppose if you're another CE, listed on the NZX, then maybe that's not your fight. I think it's maybe slightly different if you're a fund manager and trying to say where you should be investing and where you shouldn't. And maybe some people didn't think that was an egregious enough comment to be struck off a list. And you could argue it maybe both ways, but I think we felt pretty firm and certain about what we had done.
Yeah, and so you were described as, I think at the time, a $6 billion woman, because I think you must have had $6 billion under
management at the time.
At the time, yeah. And so you're 41, you got 3 kids under 10?
They were, definitely under 10 then. I think they were under 7 at the time.
Okay, it gets worse as they get younger.
Yeah.
and so what advice do you have for mums and dads in these big jobs?
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of parents in big jobs
There are.
with the kids at home, and what's the best advice you can give them? Because we're sort of learning as we stumble through it, I suppose.
I think the best advice is, build a really good support network around you. So, I give advice in my sort of, courses. The first thing you want to do is make sure that your domestic arrangements are well covered. And I remember, wiser sort of and mothers than me who are probably a generation ahead saying you need like plans A, B, C, and D.
Yeah, you do.
So, if a child gets sick, then you need to have, at least 1 or 2 different people to go to.
You press the button and that works, or that works.
Yeah, well, I think it's a lot of the plan B doesn't always work, so you do need sort of to keep layering them in.
Yeah.
I've called in some pretty amazing favours over the years. I've been lucky with availability of babysitters when things have been going wrong, and we've juggled a lot. Did
you feel guilty at times?
Yes, I felt guilty at times. I think there have been moments where I felt like I haven't spent quite enough time with the kids. And so you're running really fast and you're juggling and it's kind of okay. But when something starts kind of going a bit wrong at home, I felt I didn't have quite enough time to kind of spend that extra amount of time to kind of bring it back right on course.
Yeah, because you only get that one chance from these, because the kids, and as you know, they just go so quickly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They really do, and you can't get that time back. And I know I've certainly in my situation that we felt guilty at times,
Yeah.
But it seems like you have to do it. But you go to a funeral and no one ever says, I wanted to work an extra day, I sort of...
No, they don't. No, they never do.
Never, ever.
No, not ever, really.
No,
and the people who worked all the extra days, too many extra days, probably don't have that many people at the funeral at all. It's a difficult mix. And I think it's really hard. There are lots of people out there with 2 full-time working parents. Some of them are even more than full-time, right? They're doing 1 or 2 jobs, and I think it's difficult stuff.
Well, I reckon it's probably even it's different. But if you're on, say, doing 2 shift, low-paid shift work, and you're working across different hours and everything, I mean, you're still getting all those hours, but the money's no good. So you're stretched, and that's just as hard, isn't it?
It's harder.
It is harder, isn't it? Yeah.
I think it's harder. I mean, it's all very well if you can pay for some childcare or so forth. Yeah, no, I think it's extremely hard.
What and so you were 4.5 years in the job.
Yes, 4.5, 5 years, something like that.
It's been, and just on that, KiwiSaver has been magnificent.
Yeah, it's an incredible scheme.
It really
It's
isn't it?
done a lot for retirement savings and in terms of the investable pot of money in New Zealand as well. It's over 100 billion now, they say.
Yeah, I know, I see that, but we don't. Sam Stubbs with Simplicity, they're investing in New Zealand, building houses and things. But it's interesting. The best returns are offshore, aren't they? They appear to be anyway.
Well, I suppose if you're investing in stocks and shares, I think the New Zealand market takes up about less than 0.5% of the entire world market.
Yeah,
So if you want to, and you want to make sure there isn't too strong a home country bias, like you've got all your eggs in one basket in New Zealand anyway. So I think there is a strong argument to diversify some of that money overseas. At KiwiWealth, we used to invest a lot of our money overseas and so forth.
But it's a good fund. I mean, it's still a good fund. I know it's moved on now, but it's a great. I mean, I didn't save anything before it came out.
Did you not?
No. Well, I was meant to, but just keep dipping into it. I can't dip into this one, you see. So
yeah, you can't. Well, you can. Yeah, it's very hard to dip into. You can if you hit some hardships, but then you can't even empty it. So the supervisor has to make sure. And it's interesting. Some people find that frustrating because they see it as their own money. And
well, it is their money. It is their money.
It is their money.
Yeah.
And so I think it's frustrating if you need it and you can't get to it. But you can take the whole lot out, of course, for your first home withdrawal.
Yeah, but I just wonder, New Zealanders, I don't even think they realise how important it is to get the right fund and things like that because, so many are in default settings still, and that has a massive impact over time.
Huge impact. I think one clever thing they did a few years ago with default is they changed it from conservative to balanced as the default scheme. So I think, in general, more people are going to be better off in that balanced scheme. But yes, I think engaging with customers so they understand that making an active decision around what fund they're in can make an enormous difference to their lifetime savings. Is something that we tried really hard to do at KiwiWealth, and I'm sure fund managers are still doing that because that makes an enormous amount of difference. Just being engaged, it almost doesn't matter what you choose. It's the fact that you're engaged that makes a difference.
Well, we're all now playing the share market, you see. And I don't think New Zealanders realise, but they've got hundreds of different stocks in their portfolio. They probably won't know what's in there, but the information, the reporting's much clearer now and better, so it's not hard for New Zealanders to find out, right?
It's not hard to find out. I mean, you used to be able to go into our portal and see exactly where you're invested and how much money you had and everything. Yeah. It is clear. A question of whether you're interested and want to do it or not.
We need to pay attention because New Zealand Super will not fund your lifestyle in the future. So this is crucial. The fees are high, though, aren't they? I mean, if you look at, I think it's 900 million last year.
Was it that much?
Yes, 900 million. What a great industry.
Ooh, that is a lot of money,
isn't it?
I think. I mean,
well, it's a lot of money under management.
It is a lot of money under management. I mean, I think, where do I sit on fees? I think if you're actively managed, it costs more money. You've got to get more people in rather than putting it into a passive fund. So depending on where that is, it tends to be between 1 and 1.3%. Yeah, it's a call about whether you think there's value there. And I think there are definitely funds that, year in, year out deliver really strong returns.
There's 5 or 6 that are always sitting
that do
at the top.
really well.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to go passive, then you've really got to go for the cheapest possible fee, I reckon.
What's the point otherwise?
Yeah.
Just on your CEO stuff, what's the most asked question? When a CEO is sitting down with you or you're dealing with them, what's the most asked?
I think... What is it? It's often how to deal with their chair, what they're sort of doing. So it's always It's about people. It's not just chairs. It's the other way around.
You need to get on with your chair, right?
You've got to get along with your chair. Yeah, it's pretty hard if you don't get along with your chair.
No, you need to be really familiar.
You need to be familiar, but you can't be best of friends. You can't be in each other's pockets.
No,
either.
but there needs to be. I reckon there needs to. Yeah, you can't be. But my view would be you need to be this huge levels of mutual respect.
Yes.
License to be a CE.
Yeah.
But also they can trust you that you'll pass on. Yeah, I reckon it's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of trust in there. You need to be really good with your information flow. You can't inundate them with noisy stuff that they don't need to know. You've got to give them the stuff they need. But you have to tell them the bad news as well as the good. Yeah,
but they may be chair of 2 or 3 other entities as well.
Yep.
And so you don't want to give them pointless information. You need to get cut to the chase. And is that difficult to do? Shouldn't be,
I think it is a bit difficult, but I think that's exactly what you need to do. I mean, I think that's kind of one of the core elements of the job is sort of how you flow up good management information that they can make good strategic decisions with.
Do you miss being a CE?
Do I miss being a CE?
You paused, probably not.
Maybe parts of it. I would never say never to doing it again, but I quite like what I'm doing at the moment and how I spend my time.
Is it because you have genuine autonomy now?
Really?
I'm
the boss of me, just me.
I know the feeling. No, but there is something. I'm the boss of me too, and there's something empowering about it.
It's wonderful.
And I don't think I'd go back.
Yeah, I wonder whether I would or wouldn't. Part of me wouldn't. I've spoken to lots of people. I partly am doing this because I've always thought that grass looked really green. And I've seen other people go out and start their own businesses. And I thought, I won't know the highs and lows, or I won't know the lows of their business. But I'm like, they're going okay. That looks like it's something one ought to do.
And don't you love the what did I say, freedom? Do you like the freedom? You
love the freedom.
Like you can put the no vacancy sign up. Sorry, I can't do that today. I'm busy. But you may not be busy. But what's the biggest challenge of running your own business? Pretty complicated, isn't it?
It's jack of all trades, so I'm doing like absolutely everything, and so I thought I'd really enjoy that to begin with, and I still sort of, but wouldn't it be nice to ask someone to do things for me?
Well, your HR, your I don't know what sort of support you've got, but I know I'm HR, I'm legal, I'm paid tax, I do all that.
Yeah. Exactly. I think, I thought I'd find Xero more interesting. I haven't found it very interesting.
No, there's a few other invoice options too. None of them cloud-based.
Exactly. But I have loved, one of my best friends from uni called me in August and, told me some terrible story about what was going down in Singapore for her. So I just dropped everything and got on a flight a couple of days later. Yeah. And that was probably one of my most joyous moments. Not her tragedy and difficulties, but the fact that I could be available at a moment's notice gave me joy.
And I'd say you'd be more available for your kids too, right?
A lot more available for my darling children.
And they'll appreciate that.
I think they do. I think it makes a difference.
No, I think they know.
I've got to tell myself that.
well, my kids are a bit older now than yours, but they tell me that, put it this way. My youngest daughter, who's 21 now, she used to go behind the TV to see if I was there, because I used to do a lot of TV and news and everything. She went behind there to see if I was there. Oh. And she told me that at her 21st. Oh, no. I was devastated. And she thought my surname was 3 News, so... Oh, bless. Oh, I felt... there are times, when you get so wrapped up in your job that you think that's, this is so important now. And when you step back... What's really important is family and the people you can count on one hand and that sort of thing, isn't it? I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think there was a stage there when I was CE and I was juggling and it was going okay, but I almost felt like when my kids needed something, part of me wanted to say, can you make an appointment between 6:30 and 6:45? I can see you then. And that feeling's not a good one, right? And so when I was, when I'd left the old job and I took a sort of reasonably long break on purpose and I was reflecting on that, I was like, I don't want to be doing that anymore. That's a terrible thing to feel, isn't it? Yeah. Because you can't solve they may not be available. I feel for you on that because it's just an empty feeling. Yeah. And even now you've got to be careful because actually they come up to me when I'm on my computer and I'm working for myself, but I'm like busy scrolling away. Well, not scrolling, doing something. And they want me straight away. And you're like, you have to wait. And you have to also teach them that boundary to not constantly interrupt me, but to also remind myself why I've taken this path and I should be able to close that computer and spend some time. But they are resilient, but they're also very observant and they see us all the time on our phones. They see us all the time on computers, and we wonder why they're always on their phones. Not your ones, but my ones. Well, maybe we're mirroring that behaviour. My 9-year-old calls me out on it all the time. Oh, really? Yeah, she's quite something. Yeah, she's quite something, but she's great because I actually agree with her most of the time. And we've got like phones creeping into this kind of the kitchen table, and I'm constantly saying, I'm just you don't need to. It's not urgent. Do you think? And finally, it's been neat catching up. Do you think CEOs quickly can get out of touch with lower paid staff and everything? Do you think that they can completely lose touch with staff? I'm sure, depending also the size of the organisation, but regardless of the size, of course you can get out of touch if you don't deliberately decide to stay in touch. Yeah, and how do you deliberately? I mean, I know that some CEOs do those sort of not tricks, but they do those. They go on tours of them, might go and serve on the plane or serve in the restaurant or whatever to show that they're on the ground. But, absolutely. I tried to make sure that I walked around and went to different parts of the country where people were, spent time with them. But really, I suppose the easiest thing for me was always to think of the CEO role as a role. It's just a job, and the job, answering the phones and talking to our customers is just as important a role. It just happens that we have different roles. And so therefore, your role talking to customers is probably harder in many ways. You get people in hardship calling up, some really tough calls. They're the face and they're the voice of the organisation. Yeah, in fact, absolutely. In many ways, they are really important. They're super important. And therefore, if you think of your job as just a role, then every person who has a role is just as important. And that makes it, I think, really easy to connect to people. Except they're not, though, are they? Because you have you as a CEO are paid the most, you have the most say and the most influence. What you say goes in many ways, and you've got the ear of the board. Yeah, I have a lot more influence than they do, absolutely. But, could I do their role? Or maybe if I had the training I could do, could they do my role? Potentially not, in the immediate future. But I still think you have to value everybody's contribution. Yeah, no, I agree. If people were listening to this sort of middle management and they want to become the CEO, not everyone will be like that. Some people are more ambitious than others. Some are very ambitious. Yep. What do they need to do to stand out, to show that they are potentially a capable future CEO? Oh, that's an interesting question. I think you need to be, capable in the first place. You need to be delivering results in whatever area you might be. But you've got to do that without
while respecting all the people around you as well, because no one wants to work with a dickhead. No one
someone
likes those
climbing over
toxic
you.
people. And
Yeah.
nobody likes those people. And you might get reasonably far, but hopefully you won't get all the way that way.
Do they stand out? They know those. I mean, I'm going to call them dickheads because they're overly ambitious. They climb over people.
Yeah.
They're a bit conniving and they will knife people on the way up. But then this country's too small for that. And
It is too small for
it
that.
really is, and you got to come down at some stage. And I just wonder, they stand out, don't they, those people?
They do. I think they do. I think, you know about, the toxic people, the people who are sort of, taking credit for things that, was the work of many people. So you want to sort of build your own capability, but I do think, the CEO role, as much as it is about management, it's even more about leadership. So trying to work out how to become a really good leader of people. And, I think there are lots of people with amazing hard skills in whatever industry that they're in, who can do things really well. But learning how to sort of step up and lead people and inspire them, make people want to follow you.
Well, they're soft skills, aren't they?
They are soft skills.
Well, I think they're crucial in the 10 years ahead because they're the ones that AI will do the other stuff.
Increasingly.
But the soft skills are human skills,
Yep.
and it shows humanity and empathy and so forth. What are those skills required to be the CEO? Like those soft skills. You need to understand what people.
You need to understand people. I sort of boil it down to sort of three things. I think you need to be able to inspire people. I think you need to be realistic. You can get them all going off in one direction, get super excited, and eventually sometimes you're going to have to pour some cold water on it as well and going, actually, you've really, that's a great idea, but not possible.
Yeah,
so you
saying no
have to
is
do
important.
that. So you have to do this incredible balance of inspiring them to do their best work and really going off and hopefully all, believing that they're doing something important in the same direction. But then you have to sometimes say, but actually you can't go that far. Otherwise, you're going to run out of money or the board's going to get cross with you.
Yeah.
And the last thing, which I think comes back to the humility of being a decent leader, you've got to learn to listen.
Yeah, I think listening is having empathy and listening and having that open door. I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's crucial.
It's absolutely crucial.
Like if you don't have empathy and listening skills, then you'll lose half the staff. Like you'll lose them in terms of not losing them, but they will switch off.
Yeah, I think they will switch off. So if you're listening to them, if you believe that the whole reason that they're there is because they've got something to contribute, why wouldn't you be listening to them? That's the other thing.
I also think we like decisive leaders. Who wants a CEO that dithers around? We want someone to make a decision.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think, I read this article years ago about knowledge workers. You're not making widgets, though. You're making decisions. And if you go to a meeting and you decide to kind of kick the can down the road and have another meeting before you make the decision, you've actually not produced anything that day.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, and you've got to decide to make decisions without all the information. It doesn't need to be perfect. Most decisions are two-way doors. You can come back through the door if you've got it wrong, but, get on with it.
I reckon in New Zealand we suffer. I'll make this my last question because it'd be great. But I reckon in New Zealand we dither. From government down, we sometimes are slow to invest, and then we invest and it takes a long time to build that project. We say we've got this capacity, but we don't appear to. And I just think that we write lots of reports, we have lots of excuses, but we don't always invest.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at from a government level, I think it's really hard for people in the public service to know how to take risks. They've been talking about that recently. You're not taking enough risk in the public service. But I don't see how they've built a culture where you're rewarded for taking risks.
Well, they're not encouraged to. It's up to the politicians. And if you're waiting for the public service to come up with an idea, you'll be waiting quite some time.
Yeah, and so you need to kind of get them feeling that it's worth their while going faster and taking those risks and consulting less and making more decisions. That's a cultural thing.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I just don't think they work. I think Chris Luxon's been alarmed at how slow things go in the arm of government.
Yeah, he might have been alarmed by it. Maybe he thought things would go quicker when he became PM.
Yeah, well, it's not corporate world, is it? It's a public
It's not.
world.
And I'm no expert in the public service. I'm just making comments from the outside.
I think you're bang on. Anyway, nice to see you. All the very best and go well.
Thanks very much, Duncan.
Duncan Garner, live.
Okay, imagine that, 41. I mean, imagine that. You're 41 and you are the boss. You're in charge of everyone and you're paid. I mean, it's rude to ask what people pay. Just why I didn't do it, but you'd be paid in that job $1 million bucks minimum to run KiwiSaver funds. Yeah, $1 million bucks. Imagine that. Just say it's $1 million. I mean, you're looking at well, that's 20 grand a week. Could you spend that on it? Could you do 20G a week? What would you spend it on? $20,000.
20G a week. I'd certainly be living in a nicer house if I had that.
Yeah, I'd have a house.
Yeah.
God, it seems, but I reckon, as she said in the interview, you lose touch pretty quickly with people,
Yeah. And I mean, it is kind of, it's kind of the role of the CEO is to, you got to run the business. Lots of CEOs, I'm pretty sure, with my limited knowledge, that they'll earn their living through, stocks in the company. And so if the company doesn't do a good job, they don't get the money.
No, that's right. But you wouldn't be able to. I reckon you'd be isolated. Everyone would be out, partying and sort of do their thing on a Friday night, and you'd have to go home because you're the boss. You can't be seen to be. Yeah. Okay, folks, that's us. Thanks for your feedback and your support. There's been some really big traffic on some of our podcasts lately, so thank you for getting involved. That stuff we did, our last one we did of Mr. Ferris from the Māori Party, the most vile, despicable, arrogant MP I've come across. That's popped off, as I would say, popped. So if you've missed, if you're watching this one, listening to this one, there are others as well. Just jump on wherever you get your podcasts and you'll find them there. But we do encourage you and we thank you for your support and for following the podcast, because without you, we don't have followers, and if we don't have followers, we are gone, chopped. Okay, so appreciate it. Get in touch through our social media. Duncan Garner Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, or flick me an email. Duncan@rover.nz. I will get back to you. To my team, guys, thank you so much. Isaac, thank you so much, sir. We'll do it all again tomorrow. Remember, life is no dress rehearsal. There is no curtain raiser. This is it. We live in one of the best places on earth, so get out and enjoy it and have a great rest of the evening. Take care. Ta-ta, folks.